champions may have only just come out, but the meta has actually been shifting a lot since day one. There's a ton of developments, especially from Japan, that have been completely upsetting the ladder as well as grassroots tournaments. Let's go over day one. Everyone kind of expected weather is going to be crazy. We had Pelipper Archelodon with Basculegion, we had Charizard Y, Venusaur, Whimsicott, stuff like that. We had Floette Balance, because people really quickly realized that, hey, Calm Mind, Moonblast kind of one-shots the entire format, kind of broken. We had Tyranitar, because that's very good into the sun. And then we also had a little bit of Frostlass, you know, the snow, quite good into Pelipper stuff. So that was the day one. That was the hour one things we figured out. It's also how I hit Master Ball instantly within, I don't know, 5 hours or something. But of course, metas shift, and that's what makes Pokemon so interesting. The top megas at that point kind of looked like we had Floette, which is just a completely broken Pokemon, which is then walled by Charizard Y, and also really annoyed by Charizard Y's partners, because Venusaur can Sleep Powder, either Floette or its partners. If you try to switch in a Sinistcha to take a Sleep Powder, the Heat Wave just blows you up. Or there's a Whimsicott with Encore, which can then lock you into Calm Mind. So overall, Floette isn't really the biggest fan of facing those Sun teams. On the other hand, we also had Gengar, whose Sludge Bomb does like 80% to a very bulky Floette, and after that, it's quite easy for the Gengar team to beat the Floette team. So really, day one, the top megas were like Floette or beat Floette. But again, that's day one, because now we are getting these newer innovations. And this has been the hot new trend. We are seeing Delphox stonks going up like crazy. There are certain top players who have been either entering grassroots tournaments or just going to Master Ball with like incredible records like 22-1 and 22-0 and stuff like that. And of course, the biggest Champions tournament so far was also won by a Delphox team. But again, I'm going to show you team IDs later, so you can actually copy these teams and just play with them yourself. However, there is one little trend that is more so a prediction on my part, or a call, let's say, rather than something that has fully played out, and that is that, in my opinion, and seemingly the data is backing this up, Kangaskhan is kind of a fraud. I was playing this Sun Kangaskhan team from Sempra, which of course, they're a great player, they built something incredible, they go very high in the Champions tournament, but as I was playing it, I felt like every time, damn, this Kangaskhan really isn't quite putting in the weight that I thought it would. You know, everyone is hyping this up to be the top mega, you know, together with Zard Y and Gengar, and while it's solid, it's definitely not living up to that name. A big part, of course, is that Power Up Punch was removed from it, which was kind of like the thing that made it so broken in the first place. But I think the real issue that this mon is facing right now is that the best non-megas all counter it. So let me show you what I mean. Right now, the top non-megas, that day one picture at least, was we had Incin, Sinistcha, and Sneasler. Those three were to be found on almost all the teams in some way. Not all the teams necessarily had all three, but most teams had two of them at least, and then a lot of really good teams, especially Floette Balance teams, had all three of them. And think about it, Incineroar, while it cannot intimidate it when it is still in its scrappy mode, once it megas, you can intimidate it. You can also fake out cycle it, you can parting shot it. Sinistcha turns off Kangaskhan, because once you're in parental bond, you cannot double edge it, you can't sucker punch, you can't drain punch, you can't low kick, you can't do anything to that Sinistcha. That Sinistcha is completely walling you. And then of course finally Sneasler, you know, Sneasler loves just close combating the hell out of the Kangaskhan. So these three mons being the core for a lot of balancey teams, and then also just being good supports on non-balanced teams, has completely made Kangaskhan feel awful to play. Now of course, I'm going to show you, there's quite some new meta trends right now that are making these mons not less popular, they're still there for sure, but the cores are kind of shifting. I will show you that very soon, also in a lot of the team IDs. And then finally, another top non-mega is of course King Gambit. This one's kind of separate, but you will often find Sneasler and King Gambit on the same teams. They cover each other quite well. And of course, Sneasler is also like the best King Gambit counter. But so these were also kind of already a day one adaptation. Day one, we already saw these four mons are crazy and they were found on a lot of teams. Now, newer trends we are seeing, however, is the rise of Garchomp. Now, of course, everyone knows Garchomp is a solid mon, of course, but Garchomp wasn't really in the conversation of Incin, Sinistcha, Sneasler as the best mon ever or something like that. But now we are seeing it kind of make its mark more and more. Now, what are the reasons for that? Well, first of all, it kind of walls Charizard Y quite well. While Charizard Y could theoretically use Dragon Pulse, it is usually more so running Heat Wave, Weather Ball, and Solar Beam. And even Helping Hand Solar Beam only does like 80-ish% to Garchomp, again, depending on spreads. And so your Garchomp kind of sits in front of it pretty well, and then it gets to click Rock Slide, after which your Charizard is likely dead. You can make your Charizard extremely bulky to take only 95%, but let's be real, at that point you're finding somewhat of an uphill battle because you're really not damaging the Garchomp back that well either. So Garchomp is seeing a resurgence. Of course, it can also Earthquake Gengars or Stomping Tantrum Gengars. That's also really solid. Of course, it doesn't like facing Floette, but a lot of the partners that Garchomp can be found with can actually face Floette quite well. We can also see the Garchomp on these Floette teams because it allows you to beat the Charizard Y more easily. Furthermore, we are also seeing a rise of Aegislash. Aegislash is of course really solid because it is a steel which can wall Floette, and there's not that many high quality steels. One of the best steals is Kingambit, which is also a dark, so it's no longer really walling Floette. The best thing you can do is like pressing Iron Head into it, but Iron Head doesn't even one-hit KO it, so you know, it's kind of hard. However, the newer trends, these hot off the press trends, is these other two mons you see on this slide. And maybe you hadn't seen these two coming. It is Mousehold and Aerodactyl. So first of all, Mousehold. Mousehold has been seen play in quite some pro teams in the slot of Sinistcha. The fact that you can give Friend Guard to your Floette is pretty cool. The fact that you can Super Fang bulky things down to 50% and then definitely blow them up with Floette is really cool. You have access to Taunt. Of course, you have access to Follow Me, which is the most obvious one. It is overall just a very solid support, and where day one it wasn't quite seeing as much play as Sinistcha, right now it is on a lot of Japanese teams. The bigger upset though, in my opinion, is definitely that Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl is everywhere on top teams right now, even though day one it was almost nowhere to be seen. And it's not that hard to see why. First of all, it has dual wing beat, which is a flying move, and flying moves are quite hard to come by in general. But then since it hits twice, it can actually break through Sneasler's sash. A lot of Sneaslers are of course Mental Herb, but still it's nice that if you click a dual wing beat, you can be pretty sure that the Sneasler is being KO'd. I'm wondering if we're gonna see bulkier Sneaslers to try and live it. I don't really know the calcs, maybe it's not even possible, but I think it is. It should be possible to make a Sneasler live that. Of course, it is also a rock. It learns Rock Slide, so you are able to just decimate Charizards. And since Aerodactyl itself is rock, you also have Stab, so the Charizards can no longer actually EV around living it like they can with Garchomp. Finally, it is also the fastest mon in the format, except for I guess Mega Alakazam or something like that. It is just unholy fast, so you can set Tailwind for your partners with ease. You're not quite prankster fast, of course, but the upside is that you're also a real mon. You know, very often Whimsicott, after setting Tailwind, sure it can Encore Lock, sure it can Fake Tears, but overall you're not really putting quite as much pressure as you would like in a lot of game states. Aerodactyl absolutely sets insane pressure. If not for the damage, at least for the fact that Rock Slide can flinch like crazy. So yes, right now Aerodactyl is just taking over. And that's a trend you have to really watch out for, especially if you're a Charizard player. Now the next new hot trend is of course subscribing to this channel. I'm trying to give you all the latest champions news hot off the press instantly, so I'd really appreciate a subscribe and clicking on the bell. Thank you. Next up, Tailwind. Now, of course, we already know that Whimsicott day one was already a thing. You know, day one we were Charizard Y with Whimsicott. That's probably pretty solid. Something that is new, beyond just the Aerodactyl trend, is also Talonflame stonks going up. Just like Aerodactyl, of course, after setting Tailwind, this is still a mon that can do some output. You know, a Flare Blitz or a Brave Bird, or more importantly, maybe even a Will-O-Wisp from a Talonflame can be very, very impactful. Beyond that, however, just like Aerodactyl, it is also flying. And this is where we are seeing most of the success. The fact that you can lead Garchomp Talonflame and just click Earthquake Tailwind and then instantly start doing damage with the Talonflame afterwards as well, going like Earthquake, Brave Bird, Earthquake, Flare Blitz, is something that has been seeing success over the last few days. Again, a big adaptation since day one. And like I mentioned, yes, Aerodactyl can do the exact same thing. It can also easily set Tailwind next to a Garchomp, instant Earthquake, and then Rock Slide Earthquake, Rock Slide Earthquake. You will see on some of the team IDs this is happening right now. Next, we have the Rotom wave. Now, this is maybe surprising for people who were playing in Scarlet and Violet, because back in Regulation H, F, and so forth, we weren't really seeing Rotom anymore. Maybe it got like one day two or something like that, but really, Rotom was kind of wiped off the face of the earth. However, now Rotom is very much back, finding its place in various balance teams from various top players, especially the Rotom Wash and the Rotom Heat. Now, what's the reason for this? First of all, Will-O-Wisp is of course incredible. I mentioned it with Talonflame. Not all Talonflame are running it, but having Will-O-Wisp on your kit is really important because a lot of the best mons right now are physical. You have Sneasler, you have Kingambit, you have Garchomp, you have Aerodactyl, you have Tyranitar, you have Excadrill. Some of the most commonly used mons right now can be Will-O-Wisped and basically turned useless. Beyond that, they also have Levitate. So just like the Talonflame and the Aerodactyl, the fact that you can have a Garchomp or an Excadrill clicking Earthquake while your Rotom is still safe is incredible. Pair that with the fact that Garchomp and Excadrill are also both ground, so now your Rotom can also click Discharge. You can do the disgusting combination of Earthquake, Discharge, just taking down your opponent's Pokemon both at the same time while yours are safe. But that's not all. It also learns Volt Switch, so you can very easily have a Choice Scarf set with Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, then your move, whether it's Hydro Pump or Overheat, and either you have an instant nuke, or you can just pivot out into another piece, and your opponent kind of needs to guess what you're gonna do while you're in full control. Next, we have the case for Kommo-o. Now, Kommo-o at first glance looks less good than back in Scarlet and Violet because it's a dragon fighting, meaning it is 4x super effective hit by Fairy, which means, you know, any Fairy can just like sneeze at it and it's KO. However, anytime your opponent doesn't have Fairy coverage, and to be fair, finding Fairy coverage is quite hard, it's really just Floette and Gardevoir, maybe Primarina, maybe the Moonblast from Whimsicott, but overall, if there's no Fairy coverage, Kommo-o is suddenly a absolute beast. If you can set up with a Kommo-o, you have basically won the game. It also has really solid abilities, whether in like Overcoat or Soundproof. It has fighting coverage, which is really good to take care of stuff like Kingambit and Tyranitar. And so you basically have Weather Hate in one mon. You have Kommo-o to get rid of sand stuff, and you also have it to get rid of sun stuff. So we are seeing a slight resurgence in balanced teams teching their Kommo-os. Now let's check out some teams that I found on Twitter from some top players reaching high Master Ball. So first of all, we have Zen Show Kimura, otherwise known as the 2023 World Champion, sharing a very interesting team, which is showing a lot of the trends we have been speaking about in this video. We've got the Garchomp, we've got the Delphox, we've got the Floette, and then Sneasler, Instant Kingambit to round it out. So this is basically like a balanced team that also has access to that very powerful Garchomp Earthquake and Delphox clicking Heatwave. Delphox has Levitate, so you're perfectly safe doing that. This Delphox Garchomp combination can really put a lot of pressure on Sun teams because the Charizard is not going to be doing that much damage while taking a ton of damage in return. Meanwhile, anytime you look at your opponent's team sheet and go, oh, actually, they don't really have a good Floette counter, there you go. You play Floette and you're auto-winning because Floette is absolutely broken. Now, Zen also mentioned that if you don't have access to Floette, another good option is a Mega Gardevoir with a lot of HP and special attack investment. And this is true in general. If you don't have access to Floette, it can be wise to just play Mega Gardevoir. It's going to be a little bit weaker, but it's not going to be a massive difference. A 80% Floette is still better than a lot of other Pokemon, actually. And so when a team is built to be good with Floette, then it's probably also accidentally gonna be good with Gardevoir. Next, we have this team that's kind of going deeper into the Aerodactyl and Mousehold trends that we have been speaking about here. This reached 2,100 rating, very solid. It is once again playing the Floette, it's playing the Delphox, it's playing the Aerodactyl, it's playing the Garchomp, it's playing the Mousehold, and the Instant. They also mentioned that like a basic team selection can be Floette plus Mousehold with an Aerodactyl and Garchomp in the back. Overall, like mentioned before, your Garchomp is trying to click Earthquake, while your Aerodactyl is trying to set Tailwind, and then you just go Rock Slide, Earthquake, Rock Slide, Earthquake. Otherwise, you can also be going Mega Delphox, clicking Heat Waves. Your Mousehold is there to try and follow me, while your Floette sets up with Calm Mind. If your Mousehold is then knocked out by clicking Follow Me so much, your Aerodactyl comes in, sets Tailwind, and then you just start blasting together with those giant Dazzling Gleams, giant Moonblast from one Calm Mind setup. Next up, another very strong Master Ball team right here by user Kona5757. They went 21-1, so really solid stuff right there. Once again, we see the Floette, we see the Mousehold, we see the Garchomp, and we see the Talonflame. Again, that trend is very real, being able to set Tailwind while you click Earthquake. And then we also see the Rotom Wash. Once again, Levitate next to Garchomp, very good. And we also see the Aegislash. Again, you're seeing a very different format from day one. And then finally, another fun one I see here, rating 2000 in Master Ball. We see the Aerodactyl, but all the other mons are very different from some of the trends. We are seeing a Heliolisk. I thought some of you might like that, so I wanted to include it. It's by user 146 PokémonX. And we also see Basculegion. I love that. Basculegion with a rock move, by the way. Ooh, spicy against Charizard. That was the format analysis for right now. I will try to do another one when new changes happen. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you soon. Ciao.